The green component is very important to the work that we do at Devonshire, in that our ownership group, one of their mandates is very much involved in maintaining a sustainable environment, and everything they do is very much about doing the right thing from a sustainability perspective. So when we approached them and the architect team about wanting to launch a zero-waste food court, the response was exceptionally positive. If you see today in our food court, there are no garbage receptacles anywhere in the building. So the expectation is that we ask the customer to either bring them to one of our 2 sorting stations, or we'll fetch them on their behalf. And then, in particular, the organics, which is probably about 65 to 70% of the waste coming out of the food court, is taken to a back house area where in a 12-hour cycle, the next morning we have generated compost. So one of the really cool cradle-to-grave stories is your half-eaten hamburger today is turned into compost tonight and is on a farmer's field next week. To date, since we've opened that food court, and with some of the stuff we've taken from Mandarin and Moxie's and Starbucks, we've diverted 560,000 pounds of waste from the garbage. Doesn't get seen every day, but it's an important piece of what Devonshire does, and we're proud to be a leader in this regard.
Our main objective is unbiased, tree care and preservation. Second step is, if we have to remove, what are we going to do with that material, and where does it go after that? We always knew there was more that we could do, and we thought it would be a lot more responsible as far as being pinnacles in the industry. We always thought we could do better and really invest back in our material that we're creating. If we come in and remove a tree, it's broken down into biomass, which is chippable material. The larger material we break down into firewood, and then there's millable logs. Then it stages for probably about a year. At that point it'll get sawn, then it gets air dried, then it gets kiln dried, which is basically like a wood oven, and that basically removes all the excess moisture, and at that point it gets put into our warehouse, where we can either turn it back into somebody's hands for them to finish it completely, or we have an in-house finishing department basically that can bring you a table right to your house from your tree. We've took in over 1 million pounds of green material. Around 620,000 was actual reused material that we were able to salvage up on our sawmill, dry, and get out our door back into the community.
There's sort of this perception that you just take food waste and throw it in a pile, and then voila, a couple months later it's this magical dirt, right? That's not really the case at all. It takes an enormous amount of management, and there's a lot of really careful considerations that you have to always be making. You have to make sure that the moisture levels are right. You have to make sure that the oxygen levels are where they're supposed to be. You have to mix the pile with different amounts of carbon and nitrogen so that the pile, all the microbes can do the work that they're supposed to do to turn things from raw food waste into soil. We collect the food waste, feed it to chickens. The chickens add their fertilizer and make this really, really good mixture, which we then add to wood chips and sawdust, leaves, things like that. And then we just let those piles rest in an aerated environment, so they break down at the proper speeds. And then we flip them several times to make sure that the mixture is consistent throughout. And it takes about 4 weeks to go from raw food waste to ready to plant in soil. Up to 40% of what Canadians put in the garbage is actually compostable. Almost half of what we're putting in the regional landfill doesn't have to go there. And landfills aren't infinite. Eventually that will fill up. So we really need to start thinking really, really forward about slowing that process down and diverting as much material from it as we possibly can. Greener Bins, starting from really humble roots, we're incredibly thrilled to be just a tiny part of that solution.